History is filled with figures of great intellect, men and women who shaped our world with their brilliance and vision. But what if one man, celebrated as a genius in his time, became known for something far more sinister? This is the story of Thomas Midgley Jr., an inventor whose creations promised to change the world for the better. He was a mechanical and chemical engineer, a problem solver at heart, driven by the explosive progress of the early 20th century. His mind was a fountain of ideas, leading to over 100 patents that touched every part of modern life. In his day, he received the highest honors in chemistry, hailed as a benefactor to all of humanity. His work was meant to solve two of the biggest technical challenges of the automotive and refrigeration industries. He succeeded on both counts, delivering what seemed like miracle solutions that were instantly and globally adopted. But these solutions carried a hidden cost, a catastrophic price that the entire planet would have to pay. One environmental historian would later state that Midgley had more impact on the atmosphere than any other single organism in Earth's history. Our story begins with the roar of the automobile age, a symbol of freedom and power, but one with a frustrating flaw. Early internal combustion engines were plagued by a violent rattling known as engine knock or pinging. This uncontrolled combustion limited engine compression, robbing cars of power and efficiency and sometimes causing severe damage. The auto industry, led by giants like General Motors, was desperate for a solution. They needed smoother, more powerful engines. This is where Charles Kettering, Midgley's boss at GM, tasked his star researcher with finding a chemical additive to tame the knock. Midgley began a relentless, systematic search, testing countless compounds from iodine to aniline in a custom-built single-cylinder engine. He and his team worked tirelessly, adding different substances to fuel, listening for that telltale pinging to quiet down. Early experiments showed some promise. Iodine worked, but it was too expensive and corrosive for widespread use. The pressure was immense. The future of the automobile and billions of dollars in profit hinged on finding the perfect, cheap additive. After years of frustrating trial and error, in December 1921, Midgley decided to test an obscure organometallic compound. The compound was tetraethyl lead, or TEL, a heavy, dense, and oily liquid that had been synthesized decades earlier but had no real use. Midgley added a tiny amount to the gasoline in his test engine. He started the motor and listened. The result was instantaneous and profound. The violent knocking vanished completely, replaced by a smooth, powerful hum. It was the breakthrough they had been searching for. It was incredibly effective, even in minuscule quantities. And most importantly for General Motors, it was cheap to produce. The key ingredient, lead, was abundant and inexpensive. They knew, however, that lead was a well-known poison. Concerns were raised internally, even in these early stages. But the lure of market dominance was too strong. The decision was made to push forward, branding the additive with a friendlier name. They called it ethyl, deliberately omitting any mention of its primary toxic ingredient, lead. In 1923, the Ethyl Corporation was formed, a joint venture between General Motors and Standard Oil, to produce TEL on a massive scale. Midgley's discovery was about to be pumped into the gas tanks of millions of cars and unknowingly into the air the whole world breathed. Leaded gasoline hit the market like a thunderclap. It was a resounding success, fulfilling all its commercial promises. Advertisements celebrated the end of engine knock, promising a smoother, more powerful ride for every American driver. Car manufacturers could now build engines with higher compression ratios, unlocking new levels of performance and speed. The 1920s and 30s saw an explosion in automotive culture, partly fueled by Midgley's invisible additive. From family sedans to racing machines, almost every vehicle on the road soon ran on leaded gasoline. The economic impact was enormous. The oil and auto industries reaped massive profits from this technological leap. For the public, it was progress. For the corporations, it was a gold mine. For Midgley, it was the validation of his genius. But with every mile driven, with every gallon burned, a fine dust of lead particles was being pumped into the atmosphere. This invisible byproduct settled on streets, in soil, in water supplies, and began a slow, silent process of accumulation. While the world celebrated a new era of mobility, the first victims of Midgley's discovery were not on the roads, but in the factories. The production of tetraethyl lead was a hazardous process. The workers in the new plants were on the front lines. In 1924, at a plant in New Jersey, workers started exhibiting strange and disturbing symptoms. They became unstable and confused. They suffered from severe neurological damage, experiencing hallucinations and tremors. The press dubbed it the House of Butterflies. The condition of the workers deteriorated rapidly. Within days, several individuals were lost to the mysterious ailment. Newspapers began reporting on the strange events at the Standard Oil facility, questioning the safety of the new gasoline additive. The company publicly denied the dangers, attributing the issues to worker negligence rather than the chemical itself. But the evidence was mounting. The plant was temporarily shut down as public outcry and government scrutiny grew. This was the first clear, undeniable sign that Midgley's miracle solution was, in fact, a deadly poison. The public was alarmed, but the full, long-term consequences for the general population were not yet understood. In response to the crisis, Thomas Midgley himself would step forward to stage a bold and reckless demonstration. With his invention under fire, Thomas Midgley organized a press conference to personally address the safety concerns. He was a man of science, and he believed he could use a demonstration to disprove the hysteria surrounding ethyl. In a dramatic display of confidence, he poured the tetraethyl lead over his hands, showing it to the assembled press. He told the reporters he could do this every day without any trouble, dismissing the dangers as exaggerated. Then, for his finale, he held an open beaker of the chemical to his face and inhaled its vapors for a full minute. The stunt worked, public fears were temporarily calmed, and production of leaded gasoline resumed after a brief pause. But Midgley knew he was lying. He was not immune to the poison he had created. Following the demonstration, he contracted severe lead poisoning and had to take a long leave of absence to recover. He had personally experienced the devastating effects of his invention, yet its production and sale continued to accelerate. Having created one global pollutant, Midgley was about to turn his problem-solving skills to another challenge with equally disastrous results. By the late 1920s, another industry faced a critical problem: refrigeration. Home refrigerators were becoming popular, but they were dangerous. The coolants used at the time, like ammonia, sulfur dioxide, and methyl chloride, were either toxic, flammable, or explosive. Leaking refrigerators could, and did, lead to household incidents. A safer alternative was desperately needed. Once again, Charles Kettering's research division, with Midgley at the helm, was tasked with finding a miracle chemical. Midgley focused his search on a family of compounds known as chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs. In a remarkably short time, he synthesized dichlorodifluoromethane, which would be marketed under the brand name Freon. It seemed perfect. It was non-toxic, non-flammable, and had ideal thermodynamic properties for refrigeration and air conditioning. To demonstrate its safety at a 1930 conference, Midgley performed another one of his famous theatrical displays. He inhaled a lungful of the new gas and then gently exhaled it over a lit candle, extinguishing the flame. He had seemingly done it again, another perfect solution to a major industrial problem, another triumph for Thomas Midgley Jr. Freon was an even bigger commercial success than leaded gasoline. It revolutionized not just one, but multiple industries. Safe, affordable home refrigeration and air conditioning became a reality for millions, transforming daily life and enabling urban growth in hot climates. But its applications didn't stop there. CFCs were found to be excellent propellants for aerosol sprays. Hairspray, deodorant, insecticides, spray paint, all were soon powered by Midgley's seemingly harmless invention. The chemical was incredibly stable. This was its greatest asset, and also its most terrifying flaw. Because it didn't react with anything in the lower atmosphere, it would just linger, slowly drifting upwards. For decades, billions of tons of CFCs were released into the air without a second thought. Midgley was once again showered with awards and accolades for his contribution to human comfort and safety. He had solved another puzzle, made industries billions, and improved the lives of millions. What could possibly go wrong? As the stable CFC molecules drifted higher and higher, they were approaching a fragile, essential shield, the ozone layer. Thomas Midgley passed away in 1944, never knowing the true consequences of his second great invention. It wasn't until the 1970s that two chemists, Mario Molina and Sherwood Rowland, began to question where all the CFCs were going. Their research predicted something alarming. High in the stratosphere, ultraviolet radiation from the sun would break apart the stable CFC molecules. This would release chlorine atoms, which would then act as catalysts, systematically destroying ozone molecules. A single chlorine atom could destroy up to 100,000 ozone molecules before being deactivated. This theory was confirmed in 1985 when British scientists discovered a massive depletion in the ozone layer over Antarctica. The ozone hole, a term that struck fear across the globe, was real. Midgley's safe chemical was tearing a hole in our planet's sun shield. The consequences were dire: increased rates of skin ailments, harm to ecosystems, and disruption of marine life at the base of the food chain. The world was forced to act. In 1987, the Montreal Protocol was signed, an international treaty to phase out the production of CFCs. It was an unprecedented act of global cooperation, a direct response to the unintended catastrophe unleashed by a single inventor. There is a final, tragic irony to the life of Thomas Midgley Jr. In 1940, at age 51, he contracted polio. Left with severe disabilities, the ever-inventive mind went to work one last time to solve a personal problem. He designed an elaborate system of motorized pulleys and ropes to help others lift him from his bed. In 1944, at the age of 55, he became accidentally entangled in the ropes of his own invention and was lost. The inventor, who created devices to solve problems, was ultimately undone by one of his own creations. His legacy is one of the most complex and tragic in the history of science. He was a brilliant problem solver. His first major invention, leaded gasoline, poisoned the air for over 70 years, causing incalculable health damage worldwide. His second major invention, CFCs, tore a hole in the ozone layer, threatening all life on Earth. He sought to improve humanity, but through a fatal short-sightedness, he inadvertently caused it immense harm. The story of Thomas Midgley is a cautionary tale, a reminder that sometimes the road to disaster is paved with good intentions.